Welcome to Swiftuality, where we meet at the intersection of Taylor Swift and spirituality.
We're your hosts. I'm Megan.
And I'm Hannah. It's going. All right.
Okay, here we go.
Welcome to the very first episode of our podcast. We really believe that this is something that will bring entertainment, encouragement, and meaning to many people. And because of that, we are so happy to have you here.
Yes, we're so excited you chose to spend some of your day with us, and we hope that you enjoy what's to come as much as we have enjoyed diving into this topic as we've researched.
So for this first episode, we'll talk a little bit about what our hope is for the podcast, what spirituality means to us, why we think it's important, and where we see the relationship between Taylor Swift and spirituality.
And we'll introduce ourselves a little bit. We'll share things like how we met, how we became Swifties, and our Eras Tour experience as well.
Whoop whoop. So Megan, this podcast is your brainchild, but before you share a little bit of how you come up with the idea, I think I want us to talk about what our hope is for this podcast.
Yeah, so this idea really came to me after I went to the Eras Tour, which for a lot of people, myself included, really felt like that was a spiritual experience. And I think a lot of people don't understand why Taylor's music is so meaningful to so many people. So I think our hope for this podcast is to kind of highlight the meaning that it brings to our lives and to build community around coping with all of life's seasons that we all experience. And I think for those of us who have undergone something like a faith change or no longer feel like we have to know all the answers of the universe, there's not a lot of places these discussions come up naturally about spirituality and those sorts of things. So we're kind of left to make meaning on our own, which is a big shift from how people since the beginning of time have been making meaning.
Yeah, I really love that. And for me, I think I just want to create a space for the process of meaning making that is often so private and sometimes lonely. And I think music is like a means that help people do that, and it means a lot to a lot of people. So yeah, I just want to create a space to hear all of the stories and nuances in hopes that other people can find meaning and also like relate to in those.
Totally. So I think a big question we've been asking ourselves, and we want to kind of root the podcast in, is what is our definition of spirituality? And the definition we're going to use is from Gordon Hillsman, who defines spirituality as all that people have learned to do, believe, ponder, and practice in order to cope with and enjoy what human beings cannot control. So to me, spirituality is something every human participates in, because we're all just trying to cope with whatever life throws at us, because as it turns out, we can't control a whole lot. And I think we all have a desire to make meaning. We all have big feelings, and we seek comfort or understanding at different times in our lives. And those like big feelings that we have, those are something else we cannot control.
Yeah, I really love that. And I know like you gave me the word meaning making, and I really latch on to that. For me personally, I don't really have a working definition of my own spirituality, but I think since I was very little, like spirituality to me is a worldview. I have a reverence for nature, and I believe in the supernatural, and that just really shapes my process of meaning making sense of the world. And so that definition really helps me identify it better too. Also, another thing that's really been helping me understand spirituality is this book that I recommended to you. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yes, I remember.
But yeah, so I mean, literally, I recommended this to Megan years ago, and recently she reached out to me about starting this podcast and mentioned the book, and I was like, oh my gosh, we never talked about it. And yeah, tell me more.
Yes. I think we were just talking about audiobooks one day, and you're like, oh, this one's really good. It's like a 12-hour audiobook that, if I'm being honest, I haven't fully finished.
Me neither.
But yes, it's this book called A History of Magic. I think about it no less than once a week because it just helped me understand how people historically have seen the world and cope with the uncertainties of just trying to survive.
Yeah, dude, I really love that we never talked about this book, but like how much it really impacted both of us. Yeah, for me, the book really helped classify the three lenses people use to interpret their reality, which are science, which is this empirical evidence, right? Like devoiding of human bias. And then the second is religion, where, you know, it's just surrounding the gods or God. And the last is magic, which is the most experimental and changeable and inventive lens of all three, where people participate with the universe to cope with uncertainties, cure illness, or confronting issues of life and death, which really sounds a lot like spirituality to me.
Yes, it really helps me see that like magic, religion, and science are not necessarily opposed to each other, but that they're all serving the same purpose of helping people make meaning of the world we live in, and different people tend to gravitate towards different ones. And I think the book does a really good job of talking about how historically, like early on started with magic, and then more people focused on religion, and now more people focus on science. So I think about it all the time.
Yeah, dude, it's so helpful. Like, if anything, just the introduction part of
is
that
great.
book,
Highly recommend.
life-changing.
So our favorite book aside, we'll post the title and things so you can find it and read it if you want to. But I think a big question we've been asking ourselves is, where do we see the connection between Taylor Swift and spirituality?
Yeah, totally. Like, literally anytime I tell people that we're making a podcast about Taylor Swift and spirituality, that is the thing that get asked, is like, why the two? And for me, I think music is a tool that we use to process and cope with life. And I also think that music is inherently spiritual. I think it is something innate that flows out of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when we look back at human history too, music has always been closely tied to spirituality and rituals and that kind of thing. And it has the ability to move people, give people strength, to help them cope, which of course fits back into our definition of spirituality. And then on top of that, with Taylor specifically, she uses a lot of religious language and imagery in so many of her songs.
Yeah.
We found a statistic that religious language and themes of right and wrong feature in over 57% of Taylor's first 10 albums, which that's like more than half, which is so crazy.
For sure.
Yeah, and I feel like her music too tackles big life questions. She dives into the depths of human emotion and what comes up for people when we are lost and we don't know what's going on or what's going to happen in our lives next. She does that so well.
Yeah.
And then something else about me that informs how I see this is that I'm a healthcare chaplain. And so I occupy a pretty unique place in society where I meet a lot of people from all kinds of backgrounds, religious or not, and kind of open the door for conversations around coping and meaning making when these people are at some of the lowest points of their life. So naturally, I think a lot about what helps me cope and what helps me bring meaning into my life. And Taylor's music is always up there, very high on the list. I know, like, if I have a bad day, I'm going to be listening to Taylor because I always just feel a little better after. I don't know quite what it is, but
I totally agree.
Also, a little embarrassing side story. I was recently interviewing for a job, and in a chaplain position, it's not uncommon to get questions about how you like take care of yourself. Like, what's your self-care look like? And so they asked me that in this interview, and I legit said Taylor Swift's music.
That's so great. So
Which
perfect.
probably wasn't the smartest idea, but they did end up hiring me like at the end of the interview. So
Hey,
it worked out for
the
me.
power of Taylor Swift. And also,
I
I just love that, like, that was a very vulnerable moment for you. And that's just
That
what
was just like
came
my
out.
panicked answer. It's like, I cannot be anything but honest right now. So sorry.
I love it.
I said other things too, but yeah.
That's probably why you got hired.
Yeah, it
though.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, why specifically do we want to talk about this intersection of Taylor Swift and spirituality? Like, do we have any credentials to be doing this? Why us?
Hannah, I'm so glad you asked because yes, we do. So, of course, we're both really big Swifties, and we each have multiple degrees in religion.
Ayo.
So, there's that.
Yeah, so I mean, personally, I've always wrestled with religion and spirituality ever since I was a kid. And I'm always listening to Taylor Swift ever since I was a kid. So these are the two parallel constances in my life, and I spent a lot of time thinking about them. And like, they became a tandem thing just naturally.
I think we both grew up religious, and, you know, people talk a lot about the differences between religion and spirituality. There's definitely overlap, but then there's also differences. But I just love that you kind of made the connection of like, we are always have maybe been like spiritually minded people. And then like, as we're growing up thinking about those certain aspects, we're also growing up with Taylor Swift. And she's been such a constant in my life too, through all of life's ups and downs. And I feel like both me and you have so much in common, not only in the ways we relate to Taylor's music, but also in kind of our spiritual journeys and just general observations about the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, which Hannah and I met in divinity school, by the way, when we were getting our masters. And when I look back at that time, I remember a lot of my favorite conversations were with you, Hannah. I feel like we had similar perspectives and we thought about what we were learning in all our classes through kind of like a more global or like world religions view, which was not the case for everyone, obviously, in our class.
That makes me so happy to hear that. Because I really love our conversation.
Aww.
But yeah, I remember, is it our very first semester, right, that we had to take this foundation class together that I think, you know, we just wrote a lot of papers about our spiritual backgrounds and like family history, and we had to like read each other's papers. And I think we're just drawn to each other's stories because of those papers.
For sure. And looking back at kind of that time in my life, I was coming into divinity school really ready to learn from others, especially outside of Christianity, because I had, you know, kind of grown up with that and had done a lot of deconstruction during my undergraduate degree, which was in Christian ministries. And I was really just open to other ways of seeing the world, interpreting the world. And I was really hoping also to flesh out my Jewish identity, like my Jewish heritage that had started to become more meaningful to me in those, you know, years leading up to that. And I was really wanting to figure out like how my spirituality was going to manifest going forward. I was a little free floater a little bit.
Yeah, same. I think I was in like the middle of my deconstruction at that point. I came to div school right after undergrad, which was, I got a degree in religion and philosophy. This was my minor, by the way. But yeah, at that point I still have a lot of questions, but mainly I was just wanting to reconcile my Thai identity with the Western Christian education that I've had. For those of you who don't know, I was born and raised in Thailand, and I came to Nashville as an exchange student in high school, and I just kind of kept going to schools around here. But back to the story, I think I mentioned my great-grandfather was a shaman in one of the papers, and I've always liked the animism aspect of Thai culture, but it was just difficult to find a place for that part of me in the Western education framework.
For sure. Yeah. I really love that we were both really fascinated by the spirituality of our ancestors. I think both great-grandparents, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously going back farther than that, but trying to figure out what it means for our lives now, which is just such a really cool connection we had. And don't worry, we are going to get more into our spiritual journeys in the next episode. And so you'll learn a lot more about us. But for the rest of our time today, let's get into our Swiftie stories. So Hannah, do you want to share your Swiftie story first?
Of course. Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian home in Thailand, which is not a common thing. I say a Christian home. We grew up in the church.
Literally, you lived in the church.
Literally, like the third floor. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like church was home. I owned that place. My dad was a pastor, And so we hosted a lot of missionary friends throughout the years because of that. And I remember in 2009, a missionary friend who actually came from Nashville, she brought Fearless with her.
Yes.
And introduced it to me. And I became obsessed with Taylor Swift since then. I remember like not really understanding a lot of English, but just I wanted to know what that girl's singing about.
Oh my gosh.
I, would go on YouTube and like watch all the music videos, and I just thought she was so pretty, and I'm just, like just drawn to every word. And like, I mean, it's not just her lyrics too. Her storytellings through like the music videos has always been so great. Like I just learned a lot of context through that storytelling, but also I would look up all of her lyrics, and I learned a lot of English word through just doing that too.
It's amazing.
I think that really sets me up for when I moved here and like having to adjust to the culture, because I think I got a lot of context from Taylor's music. But I think beyond just the English vocabularies, I think she gave words to a lot of my feelings and experiences as a teenage girl.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just like with big feelings that like I didn't know how to process. So yeah, I think listening to Taylor felt like a sanctuary. Like it felt safe to sit in and to kind of process my feelings. And like it felt private and sacred to me. And I think maybe it has to do with I didn't know any other people except from that one friend who knows about Taylor or listens to Taylor. So it felt like something personal, something that just I know about. And that helped me. So then I came to Nashville for high school as an exchange student. And I actually lived with that missionary family who introduced me to Taylor. And, like it just was bizarre. Like I felt even more connected to Taylor because I'm just like, what are the chances? Like I ended up in the same city as my favorite artist. And I don't know, like it just felt so surreal.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And throughout high school and college was when most of her tours were happening for me. And of course, like I wasn't able to afford any of them. So the Eras tour was my very first experience at a Taylor Swift concert. And honestly, it still doesn't feel real after the fact.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So actually, I didn't get tickets during the sale at all. And
No.
Yeah. So, and we tried so hard, me and the group of friends I was going with. And we were just like, okay, like maybe we buy the resales. And we were just like trying to budget out like, okay, how much are we willing to spend for this? But like, yeah, mostly just kind of gave up. I'm like, I don't know if it's worth, all of that. And literally 5 days before her show in Nashville, I got a random text on my phone just saying like limited, numbers available Taylor Swift ticket. What? And I was like, this is totally a scam.
Yeah. Oh.
And I'm 100% clicking on it. And like I was just shocked because it took me right to Ticketmaster's official website and was like, oh shit, like I'm That's waiting amazing. In line to get tickets. So, and I was at work. I work at a coffee shop at that point, so I couldn't just like not make coffee.
Yeah.
So I like ran to the bathroom. I called up my other friend who has an office job, and she sat in the line.
My gosh.
Got it bought, and yeah, like 5 days later, we were at the opening night in Nashville.
What? Oh, I bet that just makes it even more special.
Oh, yeah.
You had to do that.
Yeah. It just was unreal.
Wow.
And I love that story. But yeah, so that was the night that she announced Speak Now, Taylor's version. And that was just mesmerizing. I mean, the whole night we got there, we got Gracie Abrams and Phoebe Bridgers as an opener.
Gosh. And then Boy Genius came out, right?
Yes, dude. She was wrapping up her set, and then they brought out 2 other mic
No.
stands.
Oh my gosh.
Just like slapping each other's thighs. Like, what? So that was great. And then, you know, doing her acoustic set, she was just talking about her experience starting her career here, and then announcing Speak Now, and then she played Sparks Fly and Teardrops in My Guitar, which was my childhood. That was like also my first ever heartbreak, was liking a boy who didn't like me back. And I was just like crying to teardrops.
That was your jam.
All the time. Yeah, that was my jam. But yeah, I think weirdly the concert was kind of demystifying for me. Because like I said, Taylor was this like private sanctuary for me, right? Something that like was almost like a safe, like secret place where I process all of like my thoughts. And to be in a stadium of more than 70,000 people who like obviously also love Taylor and also like have the same experience and connection with her, it is a little demystifying in a sense of like, oh, like she's not just for me, you know, like
she's not just mine.
yeah, I'm not special. I don't know, like it took me out of this like she feels too far away, she feels ethereal, and which she still does. But yeah, like just seeing her in person was just like, oh, she is a physical lady.
She exists.
It's just up there. Yeah, it's just weird. Yeah, so like I lost that sense of like the mystifying sense of what I feel about Taylor Swift, but I also gain this newfound community of just like, oh my god, how many people have related and like found solace in Taylor's music the way that I did growing up. Like she is also a sanctuary for so many other people, and that's so beautiful. But yeah, that's my story.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, tell us how you became a Swiftie.
Okay, so I remember when Tim McGraw was popular on country radio. I grew up in Southern California, and listening to country music was like not very many people did that. So I was kind of already on the outside that way. But yeah, I remember Tim McGraw becoming popular, and I was like, who is this girl? And I hate to admit it, but I was pretty misogynistic when it came to women and country artists back then. Like, it took a lot for me to like a new female country artist, which makes me so sad because I was a young teenage girl and so was Taylor, which is like
that's so
tragic.
real, though.
Yeah. But anyway, I was an initial fan of Teardrops, but I was totally won over by Our Song. But the day I say I officially became a Swiftie, I looked it up, was May 18th, 2008.
I love that.
When Taylor performed Should Have Said No at the 43rd Annual Country Music Awards. And I remember being in 8th grade, standing in front of the TV, watching her perform and thinking, I am going to follow this woman for the rest of my life. And here I am.
Yeah, that's so great. Is that the show where like she ripped off her clothes and then the like rain pour? Okay.
Yes. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. And it's just so cool to see her like at that age and being like, she knew where she was going.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah. But it was just so powerful to have grown up alongside her. I'm almost exactly 4 years younger than her. So whenever she would release a new album, it just felt like exactly what I was going through. I love how you talk about like feeling the deep feelings, and really I feel like she gave me words to express feelings that I didn't really know what was going on inside myself. When I don't know, when you're a teenager, you're just feeling so many things for the first time. So especially Fearless in high school, that album was my everything. And I like to tell people it actually came out 18 days before I turned 15. So having a song on Fearless called 15 was just so special. But that kind of shows how, her songs just spoke to me so deeply.
I love that.
So all that to say, I've been a pretty massive fan since debut, but because I was a country music fan, her transition to pop was hard there for a couple years for me. So I kind of fell off like being totally obsessed. But now I love pop so much, and I think it's really her songwriting that has always meant so much to me. Like,
Yeah.
she's just so good at that. But getting to go to the Eras tour was an absolute dream come true after being a fan for so long, because it was my first time ever getting to see her too. So yeah, hands down, going to the Eras tour was the best day of my life. We were LA night too, so we got to see Our Song and You Are in Love. They were also filming for the Eras tour movie, and you can actually see me a couple times, which is so crazy. But my sister somehow scored us 4th row seats at face value during the whole Ticketmaster debacle. Like, that day they came out, she somehow got them. I will never be able to repay her.
Fair.
But the day we got to go was such a special sister day, and then to be that close to Taylor was unreal. Like, I could see the frizz on her hair.
Oh my gosh.
It was just indescribable seeing her do like what she's best at so close. She just didn't seem real. Like, I was like, how is this a real person?
Right.
Yeah. So that in itself felt very spiritual. But one of my favorite parts of the concert, besides obviously seeing her, was before it even started, and like getting to trade friendship bracelets and talk with other Swifties.
Yeah.
Like, I totally was just like walking around talking to random people, which is so funny to think about now. But yeah, you just are like, oh, we all love Taylor so much, and like are so excited to be here. Oh, just so special.
It feels like a part of something big.
Exactly. Yeah. And I found someone who was wearing the same dress as me, and I like went up to her and was like, oh my gosh, we're wearing the same dress. And she's like, oh, like, let's take a picture together, which like was just so wholesome. I don't know, it was so sweet. So kind of in like the weeks after that, trying to imagine how I was going to go on after I had just experienced that.
Yeah, that's just like, I can die now.
Exactly. Yeah, I was like, what do I do now? I don't know. So I got the idea for the podcast shortly after I went to the Eras tour. And it was really grounded in, of course, my own work in being a chaplain, trying to figure out what brings meaning into our lives. And then I was also wanting to give words to something that a lot of us in the Swiftie community experience and relate to with Taylor's music.
Yeah.
So I really hope that through this podcast, you know, we can talk about meaning and relatedness and connection. And yeah, I hope you have a little sense of community in that in the coming episodes. But we're super excited to keep making episodes because we've done a lot of research.
Yeah, we've compiled and printed all of Taylor Swift's lyrics, including her unreleased songs and the songs that she wrote for other projects. We've annotated and bookmarked and found all the themes and meanings that we can find from it.
Yes, I have like my colored highlighters. Everything's color coded.
Yes.
But we're truly bringing all of our divinity school training to this text of Taylor's lyrics. We're going to be covering themes that we found, like faith changes, coming of age, grief and loss, religious trauma, and then we'll, of course, look at all the religious themes that Taylor uses so often in her writing.
We're also having guest episodes where we'll hear from other Swifties about their lives and the Taylor Swift songs that impacted them through those times.
So get ready for a deep dive. We're going to flesh out all these ideas because there is quite a bit. But we're so grateful that you've decided to give us a listen, and we hope that you'll enjoy this passion project of ours.
Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and wherever you get your podcasts. Everything's linked below.
Yep. All right. We'll see you next episode. Bye.
Bye.
We did it. How do you feel?
Okay. I think good.
I think good too.